Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sassquad webinar series. My name is Kim Levinsky, owner and race director for Sassquad Trail Runners. And our mission is to welcome all peoples, paces, and ages to our events. We have events all throughout northern New Jersey and the Hudson Highlands of New York. So we put on events from 5K up to 100 miles, everything in between. And so it's awesome. So check us out on sassquadtrailrunning.com. We'd love to connect with you. So tonight, our webinar is titled Perimenopause and Pelvic Floor Health for Runners. And we are honored to have Dr. Colleen Drahos on the webinar. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes. So I met Dr. Colleen, actually, I don't even know when, a few years ago, through the running circle. And we had a mutual friend. So you were co-workers with a childhood friend that I grew up with. So we connected, and I remember going to the Sussex County Fairgrounds.
I remember.
To see you, which was great. And we kept in touch through then. And then this last year, you came on as an official Sassquad sponsor and partner with us, which has been amazing. So Dr. Colleen sponsors all the menstrual products that we have at our events, as well as the body wipes as well. So you'll see her at a lot of our races. She was just at the Squatchy Surprise, which was a lot of fun. And she was handing out some other goodies. Might have included some nerd clusters, which is very fun. But again, thank you, Colleen, for coming on tonight.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say something about that Sussex County Fairgrounds race that you came to. Because I remember our mutual friend was holding up a big cardboard sign, and the sign said, "Smile if you peed yourself." And of course, when you see that, you're going to smile and laugh. So this is very fitting for bringing that up and at our pelvic floor health webinar.
Yes, and I know we were talking, I feel like it was in November at the Squatchy Leftovers, maybe, about some of these ideas to host a clinic or webinar specifically for folks who are in perimenopause, approaching perimenopause, because there's so much happening during that time. So I'm really excited for tonight. I'm excited for what you're going to be doing. I think you took a look at the questions that came in and put together a little presentation. And if you're watching here tonight live, if you have a question, you can drop it in the comment section. We'll relay that to Dr. Colleen at the end. But Colleen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before jumping into the chat tonight?
Sure. So hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching or listening. So I'm Dr. Colleen Drahos. I'm a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy. And I specialize in pelvic floor health, especially in runners. I treat all genders, but obviously this is going to be focused on perimenopause and the menopause transition. I've been a pelvic floor physical therapist since 2016, and I've had my own practice since about 2021. I'm based out in Morris County, and I do in-home pelvic floor physical therapy, and I have an office as well in Randolph. So I go kind of like Randolph, Mendham, Chester areas for in-home stuff. And then if you are farther away from that, but still need some help, you can come to my office in Randolph. And I love working with runners. I've literally had runners that I've met them on a trail to be like, what are you doing that's weird that we need to fix? I need to see you in your environment to figure this all out. But there's a lot of evidence that, pelvic floor concerns, pelvic health concerns will keep people away from exercise and will keep people away from running. And as things start to shift in, this kind of menopause transition, it makes it even more challenging for people to get out and do what they want to do. So I'm here to support everybody's pelvic floor and help them figure out what can get them back to doing whatever the heck they want to do, especially if it's being a crazy trail runner.
Yes. And speaking of, you are a crazy runner. You just finished 100 plus miles at the Westfield Ultra this past weekend. Congrats again.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I used to be a trail runner. I am no longer a mega trail runner, unfortunately, no matter how much you might try to suck me back in. Maybe at some point, but not quite yet. But I started on the trails, and I've done several Sassquad races. My favorite ever was the Squatchy Surprise when you had it at Watchung. And that was just was great, like a whole different style of race. But now I am I'm a person who does basically short looped races, mostly in the 24-hour format, and that is my absolute favorite. So that's what I just did over the weekend down in Westfield, and it was lovely. Kim was there too. We got to say hi.
I was there, and I do want to mention this is not a paid ad, but I've worked with Dr. Colleen for some pelvic floor stuff, and what's great about her practice is that she is a runner, so she understands the dynamic that comes up with athletes and getting treatment and wanting to train and figuring that out. So I definitely appreciated that about you, Dr. Colleen. It's a very holistic approach to everything.
Yes, it's all connected, and like as a bunch of crazy runners, it's like I got to meet you guys where you are because I'd want someone else to meet me where I am, and I have my own PT, and she knows I'm crazy, and she has to meet me where I am.
Awesome.
Oh, God.
Let's dive into it. So we're gonna switch screens here for you to do.
All right, here we go. We're getting there. All right. And we should be pretty good. All right. Excellent. Okay, so we're just going to jump right in. We went a little bit through an intro. I'll show you just a couple of slides that are about me, but we already talked about that. But anyway, welcome to Perimenopause and Pelvic Floor Health for Runners. I am Dr. Colleen Drahos. I don't show up with a horse mask on. Don't worry, that's just for fun. But I need you to understand that, like, we're all a little bit weird sometimes. More seriously, like we talked about earlier, I've had my practice. I've been practicing since 2016, opened my private practice in 2021, either in-home visits, on-trail visits, office visits. That picture there is I was sponsoring a local 5K right in town. So I like to really get out and be around like the local running community, and it just helps more people understand that like if they need help for a pelvic floor condition, you don't have to just sit there and like suffer in silence. There is help out there. As we just talked about too, I do run. I do super long stuff. Like I said, my ultimate goal is to get a spot on the 24-hour national team. I'm not quite there yet, but I did get a personal best this year of just under 134 miles in the 24-hour. So I will keep trying. All right, enough with that. Let's get into it. So how does perimenopause impact our pelvic health? This is a big slide. This slide has a lot of stuff on it because a lot of stuff can go on, okay? So as we're going through perimenopause and beyond, so we can kind of lump this all together as almost like a menopause transition. But as we're going through this, you can look at this slide and you can see all the things that can happen. So we can have some overuse injuries. We can have leaking with running, with jumping, with lifting. We can have stuff like pelvic pain, groin pain, hip pain, low back pain. We can have so many issues with sexual function and sexual health, even things like pain with sex. We can have vaginal or vulvar irritation. There's urgency and frequency for bladder, even for bowel. I mean, there's just a whole lot. Like prolapse can happen. We can have super weird periods. And one of the big things that can happen, if you look in that upper right-hand corner, is nervous system overload, because we are literally trying to do all the things. And as athletes who are trying to do all the things, we need to always keep that nervous system regulated as best we can. That slide, though, isn't to scare you. It's really to just give you some more information, because the more informed that you are, it means that we can actually advocate for ourselves. And when we're having discussions with either our gynecologist or our primary care, we know kind of maybe like a little bit more of the lingo to say, we know things to bring up, and we know that we don't just have to deal with these things because, we're a woman in our 40s. Like that's not it. And that is just dismissive. So information is power. You guys have probably all heard of kind of the common issues in perimenopause, whether it's from a family member, typical complaints that you're going to see, like the sleep disturbances, your hot flashes, your night sweats, menstrual bleeding that's just like all over the map, whether it's like a super duper long cycle, a really heavy period. Maybe you're going to go 2 months without bleeding, but like it can just be super unpredictable, and that's really frustrating. You can also experience vaginal dryness. You can have increases in UTIs, or sometimes just symptoms that feel like a UTI, but maybe it's not actually a UTI. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So those are kind of the common things that you hear about. But what about runners? So when it comes to runners, we can have some different stuff. So first thing first, like how I talked about nervous system before, like our recovery is going to start to have to look a little bit different. We can potentially have a little bit more fatigue going into training or going into races. And sometimes our training plans just have to end up looking a little bit different. Because like I said, we're trying to do all the things at once. That doesn't always work, especially when we're being pulled in so many different directions. Other things that can happen is our GI system can just be like running wild. So we can be going from constipation to diarrhea, and then we're normal, and then we're constipated again. Like, how do we even manage that? And this can become more apparent when we're going through this menopause transition. And this has a lot of factors, but we want to make sure that our GI system is well managed and we're having like great bowel movements. Otherwise, more things down the line are going to be impacted, especially when it comes to running. Leakage. So leakage, mostly today we're going to talk about urinary leakage, but this can also be like fecal leakage or gas leakage, which can be even harder for someone to seek help for. But these are things that I help people with every single day. So leakage, this might be during some speed work or some sprints. Maybe it only happens when you're running downhill. Maybe it only happens when you're actually kind of like getting one of those like crazy switchbacks and you have to kind of like decelerate and you're like, oh gosh, all of a sudden I felt a little bit of a leak. Like, what's going on here? These can all happen for different reasons, but they can start to appear more during this menopause transition. The urgency and frequency, again, this can be both urinary and bowel. We're going to talk about it more from a urinary standpoint, but urgency and frequency can start to change and they can start to increase and be way more of a bother when we're going through perimenopause. And these are things that we can deal with, and they don't even necessarily need like a medication or anything for like an overactive bladder. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. Another thing that you might start to notice is like a pelvic pressure or a heaviness. Maybe this is at the end of a long run. Maybe it's at the end of a long workday if you've been on your feet for a while, end of a long hike. The pressure or heaviness, sometimes that can be a symptom of a pelvic organ prolapse. Sometimes it can actually be a symptom of pelvic floor muscle tension, and you actually need to learn how to like chill out those muscles a little bit more. But you need to have an assessment to figure out like what is actually happening. Other things that happen during this transition is we can start to have especially like tendon pain. So maybe we start to get like a tendonitis or a tendinopathy, or maybe we dealt with an Achilles issue back when we were in our 20s and it hasn't been a bother until now we're like 42. And we're like, ooh, like what is going on back there? We'll talk more details about why that happens. Sometimes too, chafing starts to be an issue. And I'm not talking about like chafing at your sports bra or something, but I'm talking about like downstairs chafing. So this could be like labial chafing. This could be vulvar chafing. All of a sudden we're like, why is this happening? And it can be due to the hormonal shift that happens during perimenopause. Last thing that I want to talk about, because this can be really frustrating for a lot of runners, is our body composition does actually start to change. And sometimes our body composition changes just slightly, but our fat distribution changes. So maybe like our normal running clothes don't fit us the way that we want to because suddenly we are putting on a little bit more body fat across our midsection. So these can be really, really frustrating things to deal with as we're dealing with like everything else in our life too. So we're going to talk a little bit more details about leakage. The main thing that I have in bold at the bottom of the screen is it's not always about strength. So people, when they think pelvic floor, they're like, I've got to be strong. I've got to have the strongest pelvic floor in the world. I've just got to do 14 bazillion Kegels every single day and like, it's going to fix it. I'm here to tell you that probably won't fix it. And in some cases, it can make it worse. So specific things for runners when we might have some leakage issues, maybe with downhill running, like I talked about, that speed work, that deceleration. Other things that we might notice it with are like when we're getting tired. So maybe this is 5 miles into our run, maybe it's 25 miles into our run. And then all of a sudden we're like, ooh, I think I just leaked a little bit. Like what's happening here? Other things, constipation. So in our pelvis, there's only so much room. So if we aren't going to the bathroom and having a great, satisfying bowel movement every day, that can put pressure on our bladder, and that can actually contribute to leakage. And because our GI system can go through these fluctuations during perimenopause, that constipation can make us leak more, okay? The whole overactive bladder thing, there's just a question mark next to this one because a lot of people will get this diagnosis when they come see me, and then we kind of dive into things a little bit more, and maybe their bladder isn't actually, truly overactive. Sometimes this is like a learned strategy that they've started to, have to implement. Sometimes it is a fact of all these other things, like they're constipated. Maybe they've just gotten used to being like, I'm just going to empty my bladder whenever I see that good tree over there. I'm going to go stand behind there and take a quick pee. But sometimes the overactive bladder stuff can also present as like urgency, and that can be not getting to the bathroom on time, and we can actually leak on the way to the bathroom too. So for a lot of this running specific stuff, the downhill, the speed, the decelerating, it can be really important to have very, very specific movement patterns in your like either strength programming or physical therapy program that are very, very specific to your body and what your body is doing to help kind of get your pelvic floor to do the job that it's supposed to do during those higher demand times. So just because you're leaking with some of these things doesn't mean that you're always going to leak. It just means we have to figure out why you're leaking and then work on fixing it. So sometimes maybe it is actually a strength thing, but we don't know this unless we do a thorough full assessment. And a thorough full assessment from a pelvic health and pelvic floor physical therapy standpoint is doing both an external and an internal evaluation, because that's where your pelvic floor lives. It lives on the inside. So that's how you can assess it. But what things that you can start to look for is really kind of like looking for some trends and gathering some information. So when is your leakage actually happening? Is it literally from like the beginning of your run? Okay. Every single foot strike, there's a little bit of a leak. Okay. Is it only happening when you're like jumping down off of like some crazy rock or off of some crazy giant log that is in the middle of the trail? Is it only starting later on in your run, or is it only happening with speed? Because if you just tell me I'm leaking when I'm running, that only gives me so much information. So we have to get into such nitty gritty to figure out when this is happening, and then you know how to treat it. Because otherwise you're literally just guessing and just sitting there and, like I said, doing Kegels. It's not going to prepare you to be able to do a run without leaking. So like I said, also looking for trends. So fluid intake, this can be even as simple as I'm used to having 2 cups of coffee before I go out for my run, and then I always leak. What if you just had 1 cup of coffee? Does that make your bladder a little bit less sensitive? There are times too that I see people just significantly overhydrating, and our bladder can only do so much. So our fluid intake is going to be very individualized, but we need to make sure that we're taking into consideration our training and like what our bladder can actually do. Like we talked about too, having those great bowel movements. Is there a run that you went out and you're like, I had such a good poop this morning? I didn't leak at all. I felt great, no heaviness afterwards, no nothing. And then that next day, maybe you're like, ugh, I barely got anything out, or I had to sit there and I had to strain for 15 minutes. And then maybe you leak more on that day. So we can identify how much does your GI system and do your bowel movements impact the leaking. The last 2 things on there are sleep and stress. Like I said, when we're going through this menopause transition, this can be a time when we're also trying to do all of the things. So our sleep can be super disrupted just because we're stressed out. And our sleep can also be super disrupted because of hormonal shifts that are happening. And we're waking up with those night sweats. From a stress standpoint, things like stress, anxiety, and depression can significantly impact our pelvic floor and make it not be able to do its job. And like a lot of the time during this menopause transition is when those things can really start to kind of show up and manifest. And maybe we're finally starting to seek help for these things too. But this is a big factor when it comes to pelvic floor health. So we can't dismiss just sleep and stress management, mental health. There's just a lot of things that we have to look at. Other thing, orthopedics, okay? You are not just your pelvic floor, especially once we're going through perimenopause. If we have hip pain, if we have a tendonitis going on, that's going to make our entire system get thrown off, okay? So orthopedic issues, an injury history, any of those things have to be looked at if you're having a pelvic floor concern, because just looking at pelvic floor is not going to be enough. So if you've been to pelvic floor PT and you've had other orthopedic concerns that haven't been addressed, you need to find someone who's going to look at those things too, because you're just going to be missing out a piece of the puzzle. And these orthopedic issues can basically either like make your pelvic floor work way too hard, and this can be someone who's dealing with maybe some pelvic pain, or maybe it's kind of shutting it down and it's not letting it work hard enough. And this could be someone who is dealing with maybe some leakage issues. But honestly, you need an assessment literally from your head all the way down to your big toe to figure out what the heck is going on, okay? You need to have all these things aligned, like, appropriate foot, ankle, hip mobility, and strength in order for your pelvic floor to work at its best. And when we're dealing with things that are maybe brought on by like a perimenopause tendinosis, we need to be able to address that orthopedic concern as well. Otherwise, your pelvic floor is just going to be like, nope. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about urgency and frequency. One of the big questions that I always get is how much fluid do we actually need? Again, this is super individualized. You will hear the typical, we need, 8 glasses, 8 ounces each per day. For some people, that might be true. Some people, maybe they actually need a little bit less. Some people might need more. Some people might need more depending on the day, okay? Your training matters. The type of training that you're doing, the training environment matters. But you do need to be appropriately hydrated, but we can't be overhydrated, or else we're just going to be running to the bathroom way more, and we're just going to be super annoyed that maybe we're waking up 3 times a night or something to go to the bathroom. The other thing that I like to have people think about is bladder irritants. So bladder irritants are different for everyone. Some people are very sensitive to things that they're drinking. Other people aren't, and they can just drink whatever. And like, nothing bothers me, not even coffee. For me, for example, my one main bladder irritant is Diet Coke. I drink Diet Coke probably about twice a year, but I love it. It's lovely carbonation, has whatever artificial sweetener in it, and I love it. But I have it about twice a year, and when I have it, I will be running to the bathroom multiple times in 1 hour because it's carbonated and it has artificial sweetener in it. So coffee, tea, carbonation, artificial sweeteners, alcohol, all those things can be irritants. And unfortunately, as we're going through this menopause transition, sometimes these irritants will kind of like pop up, even if they were never an issue before. Especially, and unfortunately, if we do drink alcohol, alcohol can start to impact our bladder as well as impacting our sleep, and it can make hot flashes and night sweats worse. Okay. So our bladder irritants can be real, and unfortunately, for some people, they can become more of an issue during this phase. One of the great questions that I got in the registration was, how often should I be going to the bathroom? On a normal day, every 2 to 4 hours, okay? Not every 30 minutes, not every 1 hour, not every 90 minutes. You want to hit at least 2 to 4 hours. We don't want to be on the other end of the spectrum either. We're waiting 6 hours or 8 hours to empty our bladder. So too frequent isn't great, and not frequent enough isn't great. Your bladder's job is to store urine and to empty urine, okay? And it should be able to do that every 2 to 4 hours. If we're going more or less frequently, maybe you need to chat with me. We can figure out what the heck is going on. I do have some people who are like, do I just have a small bladder? Like what's happening? Is my bladder just legit tiny? We can tease this out really well with certain testing. I'll have people do a really kind of like extensive bladder diary where they're, taking into consideration how much they're taking in and how much they're putting out. And then we can determine, is your bladder truly not able to fill that much? Or do we have something else going on that's maybe squashing the bladder a little bit and making it feel like, oh gosh, I really do have to empty all the time. This can be things like fibroids or endometriosis. And like I mentioned before, constipation. One of the other like really good takeaways that I want you guys to have is sometimes we have to retrain our brain when it comes to urgency and frequency. So these are these things called just in cases. So we do like a just in case pee sometimes. A just in case pee, for example, say I just peed 30 minutes ago and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to Target. I know that Target is a 20-minute drive and I know there's not going to be any traffic based on where it is. It's not. It's going to be fine. I know that the Target I'm going to has a bathroom that I'm totally fine with going to the bathroom in. Okay. So if I just peed 30 minutes ago and it's going to take me only 20 minutes to get to Target, a just in case pee would be if I peed right before I left the house. And technically we don't need to do that because that's not in that 2 to 4 hour range. So sometimes we do these just in case pees to be like, oh, well, I don't know what's going to happen. But that can actually make our bladder a little bit more sensitive because then we start to do these just in case pees for anything. And then our bladder can be like, oh, hey, I'm just a little bit full. You better go pee. Okay. So we can work on avoiding the just in cases. And I do that a lot with people. And it can be like such a game changer. Very important. Okay. We're going to switch gears just a little bit. We're going to talk about hormone therapy. This is super important. And there has been conflicting information about this for years. Okay. I forget exactly when some warnings came out about it. Maybe it was like 20 years ago or something. There were black box warnings that were basically like any sort of estrogen is going to increase your risk for breast cancer. We now know that this is not true when it comes to a vaginal estrogen. Okay. It is not true. Vaginal estrogen can be your best friend during this menopause transition. It helps with so many things. It helps with dryness, whether that's at the vulva. So the vulva is like the outside portion, or the vagina, and the vagina is the inside portion. So I always tell people, I'm like, you should never be aware of your vulva or your vagina unless you want to be. Okay. So if we're going for a run and we're like, oh gosh, I'm just like feeling some irritation down there. I'm just really aware of my parts. We might actually need a little bit of estrogen because estrogen starts to take a nosedive when we're going through perimenopause and beyond. And that tissue, like the vulvar and vaginal tissue, needs estrogen. It is estrogen rich. And when we go through this hormonal shift, we start to lose that estrogen and the tissue starts to change. Okay. So we can have the dryness and we can address it with doing the creams. The cream also helps to prevent UTIs, and it also can help with decreasing those weird UTI-like symptoms even when you're testing negative. So this could be like bladder pressure. This could be pressure along your pubic bone. This could be urethral pain. This can be, frequency and urgency, and you sit down and you pee like literally 3 drops, okay? But if you're testing negative, you don't actually have a UTI, you might actually just need a little bit of estrogen at the urethra, okay? The combination of estrogen and pelvic floor physical therapy for this sort of situation is like a no-brainer, okay? It will solve that issue. It's amazing. Estrogen, that vaginal estrogen can also help with leakage and urgency. Just like we talked about before, using it like right along the urethra, that can be so helpful. It literally can help like plump up the tissue around the urethra, and that can help to maintain it being closed, which is wonderful. Big thing that you probably hear about this helping with is with sex and sexual activity. If we are having any sort of dryness with sexual activity, if we are noticing any bleeding afterwards, if we are noticing like, oh gosh, this just feels frictiony in a not great way, you probably need some estrogen. And that even counts if you're using a lubricant, because lubricants are great. We're going to talk about that more, but we sometimes just need a little bit extra help. And the chafing, like I mentioned before, so if we're getting some chafing, right kind of like along the entryway, our anatomy kind of changes a little bit for a lot of people as we go through menopause, and sometimes the labia will actually start to like change in size. And that can be the labia on the outside, like the labia majora, and it can also be the labia that are on the inside that don't have any hair, the labia minora. And sometimes when those things start to change, we can get some chafing closer to the entryway of the vagina, and that's awful, okay? So this estrogen can help protect that tissue. It is so important. I can't state that enough. Vaginal estrogen is safe, okay? Literally anyone who notices changes at the vulva or the vagina. Like I said, it could be something like the dryness, it could be a friction-y feel, it could be you noticing like, oh, just like my tissue down here feels a little bit different. I'm just aware of it. I'm noticing like a little bit of bleeding, especially after sex or even after running, okay? You might need it, or you probably need it. 99% sure you need it. For some people, this can take a couple months for them to start to notice some changes. So if you're using this estrogen for, 2 weeks, you're like, nothing has changed yet. Stay the course, okay? The longer that we've been without estrogen in the vulvar and vaginal region, the longer that it can take to notice some changes for people. So just stick with it. It will improve, okay? The other thing that I also want to talk about is application is super important. And this, I educate all my clients about this so much. I think you should be able to see my screen here for the people who can see. But this is like the estradiol cream. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. It comes with an applicator. This applicator, it's kind of like a tampon, but you can see this top is like flat. Okay. It's not really nice and tapered. So usually what I'll tell people to use, you can see on here, it has the amount that you would be inserting. You use it just to pull enough of that amount in there. You would then apply it onto your finger, and then you would apply. So you can apply it inside of the vagina and you can apply it on the outside. And when I'm teaching clients about this, we figure out exactly where to put it because we've done a pelvic floor evaluation and we've looked at their tissue and we've figured out exactly where it needs to go. Because sometimes if you just use this applicator and you increase it to your 1 gram and you insert it into the vaginal canal and then you push it up in there, it's just going to sit up here somewhere. Okay. We need a little bit more specificity sometimes to make sure that it's getting to the tissue that actually needs it. Okay. The maintenance dose for the vaginal estrogen, 2 times a week for forever. And it's never too late to start. I've had people start it in their 70s, in their 80s. It's never too late. Okay. All right, the one thing. I've had, I think, one person in my entire career so far who could not tolerate vaginal estrogen. They almost had kind of like an allergic reaction to it. Like they started to notice some significant like vaginal and vulvar swelling. So they couldn't use the vaginal estrogen. However, there are non-hormonal options, okay? There's a ton of stuff on the market right now. You got to try some, see what you like, see what you feel like is making the biggest difference for you. There are some that are prescription only. One is called Intra Rosa. It's a vaginal moisturizer. There are also things called vulvar balms, which is basically like a chapstick for the vulva and even for the labia. So that can be really nice, even like after a long run, if you're like, I did all my, anti-chafing stuff, but I'm just feeling a little bit sensitive down there. Balms can be really, really helpful. Like I said, there's a bajillion options. Try to keep it relatively simple. Don't get anything that has like some weird scent. We don't need to smell like, I don't know, like an orange or a rose. Okay. Like you just don't need it. Bajillion brands out there. I have a bunch of samples that I give out to my clients. So like a Good Clean Love is one of them. There's a brand also called Kindra. So they have all different sorts of stuff. Vaginal relief and V serums, all things for like pelvic pain too. One of these on here, this is the Demiva brand. This actually has CBD in it, but this is a balm. This one, the Demiva one, is my favorite. It's literally like, it's kind of like a little thick, And it's, I believe, like shea butter based, which is great. And then there's this other one called Olive and Bee. Hopefully you can kind of see these a little bit. There's just a ton of options. You got to see what textures that you like, what seems to work the best for your skin. But there are non-hormonal options that are out there, which I think is great for some people. We're going to take a super quick detour, okay? We're going to talk about sex because I talk about sex, I don't know, probably like 75% of my day with my clients. And when it comes to perimenopause and this whole transition period, sex can start to be different. And one of the things besides estrogen that can be very, very helpful is using a lubricant. And the amount of people who don't use lubricants because, I don't know, we think it's kind of like shameful. We think it's embarrassing. We think, oh, we should just be producing lubricant like we did in our 20s. That's not the case. The lubrication can change during this transition. So we need help. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Bajillion options out there again. It's water-based, silicone-based, oil-based. You got to see what you like. If you have a partner, you have to see what your partner likes. So many choices, okay? Number one thing with lubricant is you apply it, and then if you need to reapply it, you go ahead. And then you need to reapply it again, you go ahead. You stop, you take a break, you reapply. What you put on in the beginning might not last you the whole way, and that's all right. More lube is better. The one big heads up that I want to give you about sex and sexual activity during perimenopause, this is actually a super common time for people to get pregnant because our cycles are just like out of whack. We might not really be able to tell when we're ovulating. Our cycles could be really, really long. We don't have a great idea. And like even using like our menstrual tracker apps, it might not be very helpful. So during this time, if you're using condoms to prevent pregnancy, you want to use a water-based or a silicone lubricant, okay? You don't want to use oil-based. That is going to degrade the condoms and can increase your risk of pregnancy if you do not want to be pregnant, okay? So be mindful of that. Lubricants, overall, try a whole bunch of different things. See what you like. Stuff that I would just recommend staying away from. Anything with a flavor or anything with some kind of like heating or cooling element, those things can actually dry out our tissue even more, okay? There's nothing wrong with like if you like that kind of stuff, but if it's drying you out, that's not going to be great, okay? So a bunch of brands, like I said, I think, oh, here's one. This one is called Slippery Stuff. This is great. This one is what I use for all of my evaluations for people. There's another one called Uber Lube, which is silicone-based, and that can actually also be used as a sports lube for anti-chafing. I had some of those at my chafing station at the Squatchy Surprise. Number one rule with this, like I said, if you're using condoms, is you just check for condom compatibility. Like that is going to be very important, okay? And I want to say it's this next slide, but since we're talking about lubricants, I just have to do a little bit of a lubricant PSA. Spit is not an appropriate lubricant, okay? Keep your parts happy with something that's made for them. Lubricant is wonderful. Use it liberally, okay? Not spit. Sorry if that was too much. There's nothing that's TMI for me, so sometimes I forget. Okay, we're moving on just a little bit. I want to give you guys a little bit of information about, hey, what should you be looking out for, especially in this world of like social media is in your face and like menopause and perimenopause are totally having a moment. And you want to make sure that you're getting like good information and legitimate information. Because honestly, even some doctors who are out there, some MDs, aren't giving great information because they might be trying to sell you something. So if they're trying to sell you something like a supplement, red flag. Okay, that is a major, major, major red flag in my opinion. Supplements aren't regulated. They can cause something as severe as liver damage. Okay, there was someone just in the news, I believe she was taking a turmeric supplement, and she had liver damage from it. At best, you're going to have some expensive urine. Okay, so you just have to be really mindful. I'm all for supplementation if we have a legitimate, if we have a legitimate issue. Like for me, I take a vitamin D. Okay, I take a prescription vitamin D because for whatever reason, My body does not love holding on to vitamin D, and my levels are always low. So if we have a deficit, it's fine, but we don't need all of these, like, the next superfood supplement coming out. A lot of the time it's garbage, and it's unfortunate because we'll get sucked in, okay? The other thing is claiming that MHT, so menopause hormone therapy, which is also HRT, hormone replacement therapy. The term that we use now is MHT. That's just a little bit more accurate. But claiming that MHT solves everything. I mean, it'd be great if it does, but we don't have enough information. We don't have enough long-term research to show what's it doing from like a neuroprotective standpoint, say for Alzheimer's and dementia. We just need more research. It might be protective. We just need a little bit more. So we know certain things that it's really, really helpful for. Even things like the hot flashes that I talked about, the vaginal estrogen. There are things that are so helpful, but it's not a cure-all for everything. Two big terms, I guess, to really watch out for: bioidentical and pellets. Okay. Bioidentical is a marketing term that is used for hormones. Okay. You don't need anything that's bioidentical. It's all the same stuff. The pharmaceutical grade stuff is great, is wonderful, and is less expensive than a bioidentical. Okay. Marketing term. Pellets are little pellets that are put underneath the skin, and they have hormones in them. The thing is, we don't know how many hormones, because those are created like at a pharmacy, and we don't know how well regulated that is. Are you getting too much? Are you getting too little? They're just not regulated. So we stay away from pellets. You also may have heard of like compounding pharmacies. Compounding pharmacies can be wonderful, okay? But we don't necessarily need everything to be compounded and bespoke and curated just for us, because a lot of time this estradiol is going to be totally fine for like 98% of people, and they're not going to need something compounded. There are times, however, where people do actually have like an allergy to something that's in like the carrying cream in a compounded medication, and that is a totally legitimate reason to try a compounding medication. Okay, there's legit reasons for it. You just don't need everything compounded. Okay, the last two. You may have heard of vaginal rejuvenation lasers, and you may have heard of things called Emsella chairs. These lasers are, I believe they are carbon dioxide laser beams, and they are thrown out there as a cure-all for, literally everything. They're like, it's going to help your incontinence, it's going to help your pelvic pain, it's going to help your vaginal dryness. There's not evidence for it, okay? There's just not. If there was good evidence, fine, let's go laser our vaginas. But there's just not great evidence for it at all for any of those things. The Emsella chair is a chair that you sit on, fully clothed, and I believe it's like a 28 or 30 minutes time frame. And basically this chair makes your pelvic floor do up to 11,000 Kegels, so 11,000 pelvic floor muscle contractions in less than 30 minutes. In all of my years of doing this, I've never seen anyone who has improved from the Emsella chair. I'm sure there are some people that it could be helpful for. So say it's someone who can't do, the exercise like we want to. This could have a place for some people. But for people like you guys who are super high level and we're wanting to run, we're wanting to do these crazy cool activities, the Emsella chair is not going to get you to that next level. It just ain't. So the key with this is like we deserve not just science, but like good science, and science that isn't having someone like cherry pick some random statistic that says, turmeric is going to be great for you if you just buy my $75 bottle. Ugh. Sorry, it makes me really mad. Okay, so like I said, we're looking for evidence, and these are some great places that you can find stuff. So Dr. Jen Gunter, she's a gynecologist and pain medicine specialist. She is on Instagram at Dr. Jen Gunter. And she also has a Substack. I believe she has a Substack that is also like a free version. The yearly version that I pay for is $50 a year. It's great. It's super informative. She is a hardliner for like, there's got to be evidence for all of the things for her to recommend it. So she's not going to mess you around. The other person, Dr. Rachel Rubin, and I mean, there's a longer list, but I can only give you, I don't want to inundate you with a million names. Dr. Rachel Rubin is a urologist who specializes in sexual medicine, and her Instagram is at Dr. Rachel Rubin. She is wonderful. She has done so much for just the use of estrogen and getting the word out there about how much it can help when we're going through perimenopause and beyond. And then these are two information areas: the Menopause Society at menopause.org, and then the SWAN study, which is a study of women's health across the nation, at swanstudy.org. They help to gather information and really kind of like titrate it down into, hey, these are the things that we're actually recommending. This is what the evidence backs up. Okay. Like I said, we deserve good, legitimate science to help us make decisions for our body as we're going through perimenopause. Okay. We had a couple questions that I didn't get to during my talk because some were either like a little bit extra or maybe even like a totally different webinar. One question that I thought was great just mentioned like, what do we do about like our libido changes? I didn't talk about this at all because it could be totally separate. The key with this during perimenopause and beyond, I mean, it's multifactorial, right? There's a lot of things that can go on with like why our libido has changed over time. Is it because we've had pain with sex? And the pain with sex is because we don't have estrogen. And once we start estrogen, stuff actually gets enjoyable and our libido comes back. We're like, oh, right, this was fun. Let's get back on board. Is it not because of estrogen? Maybe like vulvar and vaginal area is totally fine, but maybe just our overall drive is really, really low. And that can also still have a lot of issues behind it, right? Is there any sort of like mental health component? Is there any sort of relationship component? Is there something that just legit needs like some more testosterone? Okay, so that is one of the things from an evidence-based standpoint that testosterone has been shown to help with, especially during this transition. It will help with libido. Okay, so in that case, it's like you got to go talk to your physician, you got to go talk to your gyno, whoever is helping you manage that care, and be like, hey doc, can I try some testosterone for my libido? Okay. Someone asked about running while pregnant. Totally different subject, but like I've had clients go through like 38 weeks of pregnancy still running. Okay. It can be totally fine. There are cases where it is not totally fine. But if we've been able to run prior to pregnancy and we were doing okay during, we're not on pelvic rest or anything like that. We're not dealing with any other issues like really high blood pressure. Running can be great. Maybe we need to do a whole webinar about that. The last thing that I wanted to hit, but like I could talk about this for forever too, how to cope with our, decreased energy level and weight control, because we want to be able to run, but maybe our energy levels aren't where they used to be. And we need to be able to run because we want to control our weight. It's like you get really, really stuck. The one thing that I want to mention about this is just our recovery. We need recovery. And this, yeah, it's nutrition. Yeah, it's sleep. But it's also like, are we just going hard with all of our workouts every day? Do we need to have a chill workout, like a walk? Do we need a chill workout like yoga? Okay, we can't be at the edge of our nervous system, capacity by just doing really high level, intense training all the time. We just can't do it, and that becomes more obvious as we're going through perimenopause. So training style is going to be different. Nutrition, like improving, like, or increasing your protein intake, getting more fiber so you don't get constipated. That's going to be important. And getting sleep figured out, which also, side note, this can be discussed with your physician, but some people do really, really well being on progesterone for sleep. Okay, so that can be something to talk about. Testosterone for libido, progesterone for sleep. Okay. One thing we did not talk about at all is estrogen, meaning like an estrogen cream or an estrogen patch. So that's systemic estrogen. That is a lovely thing to be able to do, but not everybody can do it. It's not safe for some people. So that is a totally different topic, and that needs to be, consulted with your physician for, because I can't give you a blanket statement about everyone needs to be on a systemic estrogen, because it is not true. Not everybody can be on a systemic estrogen. Everybody can be on a vaginal, unless you have a specific issue with it. And then you need a moisturizer and lubricant. Okay. So overall, that's like the gist of things. That's the information I wanted to try to give to you about perimenopause. Like I said, I do some in-home visits. I have my office in Randolph. I do provide telehealth services for people in New Jersey. Out of state, I do virtual consultations. You'll see my email up there. So it's cdrahos@drahospt.com. My website is drahospt.com. And my phone is 973-355-7872. The QR code that's up there, you can scan to get to my website. But yeah, this is great. I hope I was able to give you guys a little bit more information. If you ever want to come and see me at a Sassquad event, you can see those are the menstrual products that I provide. There's wipes in there too. And if you are doing a Sassquad race and you're like, oh, she doesn't have my menstrual product in there, email me. Let me know and I will get it to Kim and we'll have it in there for you. I am not kidding. I want everybody to have all the stuff that they need. So overall, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Sassquad. I mean, I'm here for you guys. I'm here for all of your pelvic floor concerns, whatever the heck they may be. Nothing is TMI. And I just want to be here for you guys. And for any of your questions, any of your concerns, I don't want to make pelvic health and pelvic floor stuff like taboo. We should be able to talk about it. And I'm here for you guys. So thank you very much. This has been great.
Awesome. Dr. Colleen, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing everything. It was super thorough, and I just appreciate it because I got to see the questions that came in. You really covered, I think, everything that was submitted ahead of time.
I tried.
And also, I would be shocked if somebody came to the race and said, you don't have my menstrual product in the box, because there's literally like 30 different types of products there. I didn't even know all of those existed out in the world, but you have the supply box very well stocked.
There's a little, we did our due diligence, right? We sent out like our little questionnaire to be like, what are you guys using? Like, what's going on? Because, not everybody uses the same thing. And during a race, if you get like a surprise period, the last thing that you want to be stuck with is, I don't use OB tampons because I'm an applicator kind of gal. And if someone only had an OB tampon, I'd be like, no, I'll just bleed. It's fine. I don't even know how to use it. It's kind of embarrassing as a pelvic floor physical therapist, right? Probably should try at some point.
I just learned about those recently, so and we've swapped stories, so you know how I feel about the OB tampons.
So people had them on the list, so there are some in those containers.
Yes, many
of
my
friends. OB tampons. Don't worry.
Yes,
I'm not using them, but you can.
Very passionate about the OB tampons.
Oh, we love it.
Well, this has been fantastic. I'm so glad you put your contact information. And for those of you listening to the podcast, it'll be in the show notes if you're listening to the replay of this. But yeah, any parting words before we sign off? I think you covered mostly everything. But
yeah, the moral of the story is like whatever you're dealing with, you don't have to deal with it like by yourself. And so, like a lot of the stuff that we're going through, we deserve help with. We need to get help. And if you can't talk to your gyno about it, or you don't know the right words to say to your gyno about it, like you can talk to me and I can help. I legit like help people walk through like scripts and write down questions for their gynos because they're like terrified to ask questions. It's wild out there. So we need to advocate for ourselves, and we don't want to be stuck dealing with issues for years and years and years and years and years that could have been solved,
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I'll do a plug too. When you see Dr. Colleen at the races, don't be shy to go up and chat and just ask the questions there. Cause, like Colleen said, there's no such thing as TMI. I think in running, there's no such thing as TMI, but in her line of work, there's no such thing. So don't be shy when you see her at the races.
No, it's like literally my day is full of talking about peeing, pooping, having sex, and like weird pain stuff, like butt pain. You're like, oh, you have butt pain? Like, all right, tell me more about your butt pain. Like, let's figure it out.
Yes.
But people don't know that they can, half the time, people don't know that they can talk about these kind of things with any of their doctors. So for some reason, they end up, whether it's on Instagram or something, they end up finding like, oh, pelvic floor physical therapy. What's that? And then they realize like, oh, we're kind of like the weirdos of the physical therapy world who are just like, we're going to figure it out for you. And you're going to be able to talk about all the things because in our brain, it's not weird anymore because this is just what I do for a living. And I love being able to help people with this. And I love being able to help like my runner buds with this because it's like, we don't want this stuff to stop you from hitting the trail, hitting the road. It's like, you can get help. You don't have to deal with this for forever. And it can be such a limiting factor for people because there's big, oh no, I'm going to leak. I can't get out. I can't get out and run today. It's like, no, fix it. You got to figure it out and we can fix it.
Amazing. Yes. Well, thank you again. This was fantastic. And if you're listening to this and you think like, oh, I got another idea for you guys to do a webinar, let us know. Especially if it's with Dr. Colleen. I know she was just telling me before the webinar started how passionate she is and enjoys stuff like this. So we'd love to put out some more content for you guys if you have some ideas.
Yeah. And if there's like a really specific perimenopause, like, oh my gosh, I was just like, how do I distill this down into a couple things? Because otherwise we're going to sit here for like 7 hours. So if there's a really like niche topic that we want to talk about and figure out, like we can do a whole, 40, 45-minute talk about one very, very specific thing, whatever. I'm all for getting more information out there and getting people like the help that they need.
Amazing. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching live or listening to the replay on our podcast or watching the replay on YouTube, appreciate you guys tuning in. And again, if you want to learn more about Sassquad, visit our website, sassquadtrailrunning.com. And till we see you again, keep it squatchy.